So, assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So we are here going to deliver the material about the reading skill of the first group in the study of English skill. Before we started, I want to introduce ourselves. My name is Ahmad Ibrahim as a speaker one, and then the next is Mukhaya as a speaker two, and the next one is Priyanjaya Gumilangsakti, and the last is Iwan Siswanto. So yeah, let's just start it. Nature of reading abilities. Reading is a process because it has a series of acts proceeding from one step to the next. These are several steps involved when someone is reading. First is perception. It is a step involved in reading by which the reader perceives the written symbols on the text through the use of his external sense. Second is comprehension. It is the step involved in reading by which the reader understands the text. And the third is reaction. It is the step involved in reading wherein the reader evaluates the text which is being read. And then the next matter is the definition of it. Many experts have given their definition about what reading really means. Reading is very important skill that students must be mastered because the reading cannot be separated into the process of teaching and learning. Reading is the most important activity in any class, not only as a source of information, but also as a means of consolidating and extending one's idea and knowledge of language. According to Noor, reading is a fluent process of readers combining information from a text and their own background knowledge to build meaning. According to Wiralodra, reading is an active skill that constantly involves guessing, predicting, checking, and asking oneself questions. And we move to the next matter, psychological theory of reading. In this psychological theory of reading, we have behaviorism, cognitivism, and social constructivism. We're going to start with behaviorism. Behaviorism or bottom-up models approach to reading was influenced by behaviorist psychology of the 1950s, which climate learning was based upon habit formation, brought about by the repeated association of stimulus with a response, and language learning was characterized as a response system that humans acquire through automatic conditioning process, where some patterns of language are reinforced or rewarded and others are not. And only those patterns reinforced by the community of language users will persist. That's from Omega. Behaviorism became the basis of the audiolingual method, which sought to form second language habits through drilling, repetition, and error correction. And today, the main method associated with the bottom-up approach to reading is known as phonics, which requires the learner to match letter with sound in a defined sequence. The second one is cognitivism, or top-down models. In top-down models of reading, the reader's cognitive and language competence plays a key role in the construction of meaning from printed materials. Most of these models, from Goodman and Smith, are based on psycholinguistic theory. That is, the theory in which there is an interaction between talk and language. Goodman defines reading as a process which involves using available language clues that are selected from perceptual input on the basis of readers' prediction. As the information is processed, tentative decision in the top-down models is used only to support or reject hypotheses about meaning. Meaning in this case, comprehension. According to these models, is obtained by using only as much information as necessary from the graphic, syntactic, and semantic clue systems. Other cues are based upon the reader's linguistic context. And the last social theory is, psychological theory is social constructivism. Social constructivism is a sociological theory that assumes that within a social group, knowledge is constructed or developed. Um, the interactive compensatory model of reading was developed primarily to explain developmental and individual differences in the use of context to facilitate word recognition during reading. And then the next material is type of reading. Reading, which is one of the four language skills, can be classified into two types: initial reading and reading comprehension. Initial reading. It is an effort made by those who have not been able to read to learn reading. For example, how to read the alphabets and combination of letter or simple word. And second is reading comprehension. It is an activity aimed to understand the message of particular text. Initial reading and reading comprehension are the types of reading which have the advantage. Initial reading very useful to use for the children who are learning to read English. For example, is how to read the alphabets. So that is my material. I want to give it to Mukhaya as a next speaker. So Mukhaya, thank you.
The purpose of reading. First, reading to search for simple information and reading to skim. We typically scan the text for a specific piece of information, our specific word. It means we read the text to looking for specific information or word. For example, when we read the newspaper, we didn't read the whole text, but we just read some part of the text which we think it is interested, or we just looking for a particular information from the text. And the second is reading to learn. We read the text to learn a considerable amount of information from the text. It requires to remembering main idea that elaborate the main and supporting ideas in the text, and then recognize and build rhetorical frames that organize the information in the text and link the text to reader's knowledge base. And the third is reading to integrate information, write and critique text. It's related about the relative importance of complementary, mutually supporting or conflicting frame to accommodate information from multiple sources. But reading to write or reading to critique text is various of reading integrate information, but requires abilities to compose, select, and critique information from a text, and both purpose represent common academic task. And the fourth is reading for general comprehension. Reading for general comprehension is the ability to understand information in the text and interpret it appropriately. Defining fluent reading comprehension. The definition of reading comprehension can be set according to necessary process as fluent reading is a rapid process, efficient process, interactive process, strategic process, flexible process, evaluating process, purposeful process, comprehending process, learning and linguistic process. Describing how reading works, components of reading abilities. There are two parts of reading process explanation. And first is lower level process. It's about how to recognize the word as a rapid and automatic, or we can call it lexical access. And the second is higher level of process. It's about the ability to make a summary model of what the text is likely to mean. A good reader usually constructs a more elaborate interpretation to understand text meaning. Its ability to understand the text meaning of the text more deeply. And then synthesizing research perspectives, model of reading. First, metaphorical models of reading. Point A, bottom-up models. In these models, reading follow a mechanical patterns, which is the reader creates a piece-by-piece mental translation of the information in the text. Point B, top-down models. Reading is primarily directed by reader goals and expectation. This model characterizes that the reader as someone who has a set of expectation about text information. Point C. Interactive models. Interactive models as a general metaphorical explanation. Its simple idea behind this view can take useful idea from bottom-up perspective and then combine with a top-bottom up view. And the second is specific models of reading as a research synthesis. Point A. Psycholinguistic guessing game model. This model portrays reading comprehension as universally applicable interactive process of hypothesizing, sampling, confirming information based on background knowledge, expectation about the text, and context information from the text. And then compensatory models. This model argues that readers develop efficient reading process. Less automatic process interact regularly, automatic process operate relatively independently, and reading difficulties lead to increased interaction and compensation, even among processes that would otherwise be more automatic. And last, word recognition model. Word recognition models are based on connectionist theories how to mine organize information and learns from exposure to text. And the second is higher level of process. It's about the ability to make a summary model of what the text is likely to mean. A good reader usually constructs a more elaborate interpretation to understand text meaning. Its ability to understand the text meaning of the text more deeply. And then synthesizing research perspectives, model of reading. First, metaphorical models of reading. Point A, bottom-up models. In these models, reading follow a mechanical patterns, which is the reader creates a piece-by-piece mental translation of the information in the text. Point B, top-down models. Reading is primarily directed by reader goals and expectation. This model characterizes that the reader as someone who has a set of expectation about text information. Point C. Interactive models. Interactive models as a general metaphorical explanation. Its simple idea behind this view can take useful idea from bottom-up perspective and then combine with a top-bottom up view. And the second is specific models of reading as a research synthesis. Point A. Psycholinguistic guessing game model. This model portrays reading comprehension as universally applicable interactive process of hypothesizing, sampling, confirming information based on background knowledge, expectation about the text, and context information from the text. And then compensatory models. This model argues that readers develop efficient reading process. Less automatic process interact regularly, automatic process operate relatively independently, and reading difficulties lead to increased interaction and compensation, even among processes that would otherwise be more automatic. And last, word recognition model. Word recognition models are based on connectionist theories how to mine organize information and learns from exposure to text.
Micro and macro skills. In micro skills, included discriminate among distinctive grammars and orthographic pattern of English, return chunk of English of different length in short-term memory. The third is process written at an efficient rate of speed to suit the purpose. The fourth is recognize a core of words and interpret word order pattern and their significance. The fifth is recognize grammatical word class, noun, verb, and etc. with the system is tense, agreement, and pluralization. Pattern, rule, and replies call forms. The next is recognize that a particular meaning may be expressed in different grammatical forms. The last is recognize comprehensive device in written discourse and their roles in signaling the relationship between and among clauses. In macro scale, the first is recognize the rhetorical form of written discourse and their significance for interpretation. Second is recognize the communicative function of written text according to form and purpose. The third is infer context that is not explicit. That is not explicit by using background knowledge. The fourth is from describe even ideas and etc. Either link and connection between event, tone scales, and event. And the text sets relation as main idea, supporting idea, new information, give information, generalization, and exemplification. The next is distinguish between literal and implied meanings, and the text cultural specific reference and interpret them in a context of the appropriate cultural schema. The last is develop and use a battery of reading strategies such as scanning and skimming, detecting discourse markers, guessing the meaning of words from context, and activating schemata for the interpretation of text. The next skills is ASCII3R. The ASCII3R is survey, question, read, recite, and review. It is a comprehension strategy that helps students think about the text they are reading while they are reading, often categorized as study strategy. ASCII3R helps students get it the first time they read a text by teaching students how to read and think like effective reader. These strategies included the following 5 steps from Robinson in 1946. The first is survey. Students review the text to gain initial meaning from the heading, bolded text, and charts. The next is question. Students begin to generate questions about their reading from previewing it. The third is read. As a student read, they need to look for answers to the question they formulate during their preview of the text. Their question based on the structure of the text help focus student reading. The next is recite. As students move to the text, they should recite or rehearse the answer to their question and makes notes about their answer for later studying. The last is review. After reading, students should review the text to answer lingering questions and recite the question they repeatedly answered. The benefit from ASCII3R is can require students to activate their thinking and review their understanding throughout their reading. It is also dissuades students from writing and then skimming for tests. Since the 5 steps requires them to review information and create notes during their initial read. Their notes from the initial reading become their study guide. The next skills is KWL from Ogle in 1986. KWL is know what to know, learn what to know, and learn. Is research strategy. The approximate acronym stands for what I know, what I want to know, and what I learn. My student and teacher also use it as a reading comprehension. KWL is most often shown in the third column graphic organizer. The first column is record what you already know about a particular topic, a priority knowledge, before you start research the topic. Second column is ask yourself what do I want to know about a topic and then record those points. This helps you to start formulating research question, which is a key component of the research process. The third column is record what you learned during the research process. Often this column prompts further research and further KWL questioning. The purpose of the KWL strategy several purpose. The first is elicit student priority knowledge of the topic of the text. The second is set a purpose for reading. The last is help students to monitor their comprehension.
Okay, it's my turn. I'm going to explain my material about how to use KWL strategy, step involved in reading, and characteristic of reading process. KWL 1986 is an instructional reading strategy that is used to guide students through a text. Students begin by brainstorming everything they know about a topic. This information is recorded in the K column of the KWL chart. Students then generate a list of questions about what they want to know about the topic. These questions are listed in the W column of chart. During or after reading, students answer the question. They are in a column. This new information that they have learned is recorded in the L column of the KWL chart. Purpose. The KWL strategy serves several purposes. First, elicit student prior knowledge of the topic of the text. The second, sets a purpose for reading. Third, helps students to monitor their comprehension. And how to use KWL strategy? Uh, First, choose a text. This strategy works best with expository text. Second, create a KWL chart. The teacher should create a chart on the blackboard or on an overhead transparency. In addition, the students should have their own chart on which to record information. Third, ask students to brainstorm word, term, or phrase they associate with a topic. The teacher and student record this association in the K column of their chart. This is done until students run out of idea. K columns suggestion, like have question ready to help students brainstorm their idea. Sometimes students need more prompting than tell me everything you know about blah 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 to get started. Encourage students to explain their association. This is especially important for those associations that are vague or unusual, as what made you think of that. Fourth,
Ask student what they want to learn about the topic. The teacher and student record this question in the W column of their chart. This is done until student run out of ideas for question. If student respond with statement, turn them into question before recording them in the W column. W column suggestion. Ask an alternative question for generating idea for the W column. If in response to what do you want to learn about this topic, your students are either having trouble coming up with idea or are saying nothing, try asking one of the following questions instead. What do you think you will learn about this topic from the text you will be reading? Choose an idea from the K column and ask what would you like to learn about this idea. Come prepared with your own question to add the W column. You might want student to focus on idea in the text on which the students' questions are not likely to focus them. Be sure not to add too many of your own question. However, the majority of the question in the W column should be student generated. Have students read the text and fill out the L column of their chart. Students should look for the answer for the question in their W column. Students can fill out their L column either during or after reading. L column suggestion. In addition to answering the W column question, encourage students to write in the L column anything they found especially interesting. To distinguish between the answer to their question and idea they found interesting. As students coded the information in their L column, for example, they can put a check mark next to the information that answer question from the K column, and they can put a star to next idea that they found interesting. B. Have students consult other research to find out the answer to question that were not answered in the text. It is unlikely that all of the student questions in the way column will be answered by the next. 6. Discuss the information that students record in the L column. Ugly DM 1986 WKL, a teaching model that developed active reading of expository text reading. Example. Following is the example of a completed KWL chart that students might complete if they were reading a text about gravity. K. It keeps us from floating around. W. What is gravity? And L. Gravity is the force that pulls objects toward Earth. K. It makes things fall. W. Why is there less gravity on the moon? And the L. The amount of gravity there is depends on masses of the object involved. The moon is a lot less massive than the Earth, so there is less gravity on the moon than there is on Earth. The student question about Newton was not answered in the text. Students should be encouraged to consult other sources to find out the answer to this question. Reading process. Reading is an attractive problem-solving process of making meaning from text. Literacy for learning. The report of the expert panel on literacy in grades 4 to 6 in Ontario, P61. Reading is a complex interaction between the text reading and the purpose for reading, which are shaped by the reader's prior knowledge and experience. The reader knowledge about reading and writing language and the reader language community which is culturally and socially situated. The reading process involves 5 stages. Pre-reading. Pre-reading is a technique that allows reader to become familiar with the material to be read. Reading is an activity to see the written text and the process of understanding the content of the text out loud or silently. Responding, exploring, and applying. Throughout the reading process, reader use a variety of strategies, sometimes multiple strategies, at once to help them make meaning from a text. Characteristic of reading process. First, reading is an intricate process. Once reading performance is affected by a number of connections that is not easy to explain why in individual reading capacity may be satisfactory or otherwise. The second, reading is a two-way process between the author and the reader. Third, reading is a greatly a visual process. Good eyesight is required in good reading. Fourth, reading is an active process, a thinking process. The reader usually reacts physically, emotionally, intellectually with what he reads. And the last, effective reading is most likely depend on the reader's previous knowledge or experience. That's all from me. Thank you.